Good morning, you guys. It's Saturday. It's 7:37 in the morning. And I'm standing under this massive mesquite tree that I have in my yard. If you have a mesquite tree, you know how beautiful they are. And I'm just looking at all of the different life forms that are in this tree right now. Spiders and got bees all over the place and the higher portions of the tree. It's really quiet. I hear one of my dogs somewhere nearby here. Pretty peaceful. I have a chair under this mesquite that I like to sit in. Kind of like it's like an old wicker rocking chair. It's a good place to do some thinking. But I was thinking this morning. I was thinking about those times of awakening. You know, where you're taking on new ideas and there's something inside your mind that's trying to open up. It's trying to, you feel like, something's trying to talk to you. Something's trying to reach you. And there might not be a whole lot of clarity around it, but you recognize that it's like a message is trying to get through. And I'm looking at this spider web right here. It's reminding me of something. Shall we have a little story? You know, a long time ago, I think it was even before I started this business, I was going to work one day and I was leaving the house. And where I was living at that time, it was out in the country. And we had this like a wire fence and a gate, a big gate, that was, you had to swing open. And it had these wire square panels, for lack of a better word. It's like it just was this really thin wire but strong, and that was spread across the frame of the gate. And on this particular morning, there was a lot of dew from overnight, and there was this spider web on it. And so I was getting ready to leave, and I just noticed the sun was coming up, and I just noticed that the sun was hitting the spider web, and it was covered in all these little dew droplets, like really small droplets. And so it was almost like the spider web itself was outlined with some kind of glow, because the sun was hitting those water droplets and it was just illuminating all of the intricacy of the spider web. And it was, so detailed. This is like one of those webs, like it's one of the perfect ones, where you just are, and you're looking at this and you just find yourself saying, how in the world does a spider know how to do this? And and I remember just taking the time. I'm looking at it and just amazed, because I had been all over the world, Iraq, and I'd seen spiders there too, some big ones, by the way. But then spiders there, they spin the same kind of web, and you're like, geez. And it's almost like, how do they know how to do this? It's like, what do they have? Like spider web conventions, and they trade secrets, and they travel and go get the low down and skinny from other spiders on how to do it. And it's just like amazing, and nature's like that, where you see like animals, they just know they know when to come, they know when to leave. And they do things, bees too, they just do things that seem like how? It just leaves you really scratching your head now. And so I remember just looking at this situation and saying to myself, like, this is unbelievable what's going on here. And so, I close the gate and I get in the car and I start traveling to work, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm just like, on the way to work, I can't get this out of my head. And I'm thinking, where does this information come from? And I'm thinking about it all day long, and thinking about it for days. And I remember asking my brother, like, because he thinks he's a pretty smart guy, and I guess he is. And I said, well, what do you think about all of this? And he's like, well, it's instinct. And, just that answer just doesn't do something for me. It's just like, well, okay, well, instinct, that's just a word that, um, it doesn't describe the process. It doesn't really give you any information. It's just there. And, but we're what? Sometimes we're just moved or expected to just say, oh, it's just that way. It's just the way it is. And for me, that just doesn't really work out very well because I feel like the devil's in the details, you know? And there's just a lot of wonder and awe. And I feel like it needs to be observed, it needs to be reflected on, it needs to be acknowledged. Why? Because there's information there, there's inspiration there, it's creativity, it's art, it's beauty. And when you talk about nature, when you talk about the nature of reality, you talk about the thoughts that are happening in your head, your heart's desires, your dreams, your manifestations. I think that words like instinct just don't do it justice. It just doesn't tell the story. And I remember at this time, I was really looking for a lot of meaning in my life and looking for things in this world that would somehow inspire me, I guess, something that would feel important to think about, something that was interesting, something that was inspirational. And the things that were happening in my life at that time just wasn't doing it. And the things that I saw while I was in the theater of war and the aspects of myself that I had to experience in that setting were it just wasn't satisfying me. It wasn't satisfying. And I wanted something different, something more, something better. And I noticed that, like today, these days, I think there's a lot of people who are feeling that way. And we're looking for that quality, that's something that is going to enhance our life, something that's going to really grab us and hold our attention, and to find something that is going to allow us to go deep inside, looking for those big answers, looking for some clues, looking for some answers And this process, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that can take years, many years, to unfold in its entirety. Portions of it unfold slowly, and you start to realize who you are, who you're becoming, and who you want to be, the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of world that you want to live in. And over time, your life can resemble that spider web, the intricacy of that spider web, and all these different fragments and all these different avenues that your experience will take you. And all your experiences are linked by all these connections, like you see on a spider web. And it all tells a story. And what's that story going to be? I think, I remember at that time, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I remember one day I was unloading a bunch of hay and stuff for the horses that I had at that time. And I just remember feeling like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Is this really like what life is all about? And I hadn't saved any money for retirement, and the job that I had just wasn't really doing it for me. But I didn't have any plans for something different. And sometimes that void, that place where you're in between is really uncomfortable. And like you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. But you're supposed to be doing something different than what you are doing. My thoughts on this is that it's a necessary part of your story. And I think that God, the universe, has a way of meeting you in this place if you want it. But you have to ask. If you need help, you need to ask. And that energy of being willing to take some steps forward, even if it's uncertain, even if you're just taking this leap of faith. And that's really what's needed. That's what's going to be asked of you. And you're going to have to get uncomfortable, and you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's what it's like sometimes. And that's part of our nature that we don't really like, is being confronted with that part. We like schedules. We like to know what's up ahead. We like to know what we're going to be doing. We want to know what's going to be asked of us. We want to have some directions. We want to have like it all mapped out like in Google Maps. But life doesn't work that way always. And it's just really, where you just have to ask yourself this question, where are you in your life? And if you're watching these videos, you're probably in a place where you're ready for some change, but you don't really know what that looks like. And I just want you to know, I know how that feels. I've been there, and I am there still, in some capacity. Some of my story is set in stone, but much of it is not. And there's still that sense of openness, void, uncertainty in my life too. So we're all going through this together. I might have a little more experience than some of you watching. My story certainly isn't done, and neither is yours. Maybe yours is just starting, like mine was so long ago. I really started to, my awakening started about 20 years ago. And my time in the Army, I think, was probably the first catalyst. Going to Iraq and taking part in those things were a real eye opener. And making it through that experience alive really started this process of awakening, of asking questions, of noticing that things were not like they seemed. Lots of questions that needed answers. Like, who am I? Why am I here? How did I get to be here? And I just want to say, that ultimately, to answer these questions, you have to be in a place where you're willing to accept, one, that you are a special person. No matter what your failures are, wherever you're at right here, whatever your yesterday looked like, your past history, whatever you think that is, whatever that story is that you're telling yourself. Hello, Mr. Rabbit. For you to move forward, you have to ditch that story. The story of the one where you're not enough, where you've done too much, or you're wrong, you're bad, you're whatever. That has to go. There's no room for that in your future. And as long as you're holding on to that story, there won't be any room for the new story. The new story is going to require you to see yourself the way God sees you. And I know that might sound like a tall story. It might even seem like something that's just not possible. And I've been there. I understand. You convict yourself. You're convinced that, you've walked yourself into a basement you can't get out of. That you've said too much, or you haven't said enough, or you've done too much, or you haven't done enough, or you burned this bridge and there's no going back. You look behind you and you say, there's no bridge. I burnt it. I burnt it real good. There's no way for me to cross that divide behind me. I can't go back. And now I'm stuck. And all I could tell you is that as long as you believe that, then you are. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can find the courage right now. You can decide that today is going to be the first day in the rest of your story. And it starts with small baby steps, You put one foot in front of the other. You get curious about a purpose-driven life. There's lots of materials on the internet for you to explore this mindset, this awakening that you're going through, and you could just start right there. You take and open up ChatGPT and you can say, I'm not satisfied with my life and where I'm at, and I want to make some changes. What does it mean to awaken? Just ask a question like that, and you're going to get a neat starting point. You have to decide what you want out of life. And we're so lucky at this time. We got the internet, this unbelievable resource at our disposal. But what are we choosing to spend our time doing on the internet? What kind of material are we consuming? You have to use your time wisely. You've got to take charge of this situation. And the good news is that what you have available today is like a miracle. When I was growing up, we had encyclopedias on our bookshelf, and that was it. That was it, man. They were late. You had one book that was A, the next book was B, any topic that started with the letter B. Some volumes, I guess, they had, it was like, it could be H and I. But you had this like 26 volumes or something, to make up the set. And that's all you had. And man, I love those things because you could just look up anything and you thought, wow, you had the world in your hands, but it's nothing compared to what we have today. This internet, this global consciousness that's forming. And you guys, it really is that. It really is a developing consciousness, a collective consciousness. And you're connected to it. The question is how are you connected to it? What are you giving and receiving to this consciousness? Because you can find the worst material imaginable on the internet, but you could also find the most freeing and inspiring material. And it really depends. Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear's still with us. He's happy too. Are you happy, Mr. Bear? Look at that tail wag. Oh, and there's Mrs. Honey right there. It's up to you. You have to decide. How do you want this life of yours to look? And it's a process of it's kind of like, you ever notice like how creative kids are? They just draw and draw and draw and draw. It's a natural quality. But then, you stop doing it when you think, oh, life's going to require all of this work now from me, and I have to get busy doing this and that. And you get wrapped up doing all these tasks, and you stop being creative. And what the world, I think, really needs right now is for all of us to go back to the drawing board here and become painters again, drawers again, creators again. And it starts with you, though. You get creative. You get to see your life as a blank canvas. And what do you want to put on that canvas? And so I think that my message here today is that I just wanted you to, have you ever heard that term, stop and smell the roses? That's what we need to do. Make sure you're spending time out of your week doing that. Stop and smell the roses. And if you don't have roses, stop and look at all the life that exists on your trees in your yard. It's so quiet. It's just like that, man. Some days there's so much noise and dogs barking everywhere. And then there's other days and it's just so quiet like this. You ever wonder like why? I do. I don't get it, man. It's like there's just something in the air. You guys, you see, it's energy. It's energy. And we're all tapped into it. It's just a question of how. But anyway, I enjoyed our little talk. I hope that your Saturday, your weekend is going to be good. And I hope that your day is starting off well. I love you. Bye.